right. Well, we've got a few late joiners. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this beautiful grey day in Christchurch. Hopefully the sun is shining where you are. No doubt it is where you are, Matt, and sunny Victoria. It's always sunny over there. Thanks for joining us for this week's meetup. Really stoked to say that CEO of Chameleon Creator, Todd Hammington, is joining us. Many of you probably know Todd, and you may have even spoken to him since you've been working with Chameleon, or you've come across Chameleon. I've been excited to have this conversation for a little while now. So thanks for joining me, Toddy.
Thrilled to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So we're going to be jumping around on a few different topics today, and we're of course going to touch on Chameleon and learning design and visual design. I've been working with Toddy though for about, I don't know how long it's been now. Is it 4 years maybe? It's been a while. We started working together over in Melbourne. Didn't know Toddy before I started working with him, and I'm going to embarrass him right now from the get-go. And just say, I've thoroughly enjoyed working with Todd, learned heaps from him, and he's really, I guess, inspired me to push myself a little bit further in lots of different ways through all the different conversations we've had. One of the things that I've talked at length to or about with Todd is sport. We both share a really keen passion on all things sport, whether it's lawn bowls, cricket, league, AFL, rugby, all of the above. But what many of you may not know is that Todd has quite a skill in karate. And I'm going to jump to he's already shaking his head. He didn't know I was going here. But I'm going to jump to the end of this story, because I know if I bring it up at the end, it's going to sound a little bit awkward. But I'm keen to go right back to the start, Toddy, if it's okay with you in a moment. Yeah. Todd's actually a Commonwealth gold medalist for New Zealand in karate. I believe it was over in London. Todd, is that right? Manchester. Sorry, got the
time ago, but
got the right country.
Here.
Yeah. But I'm really keen to, I guess, to talk a little bit more about this, because I know that you bring a lot of what feels like you brought a lot of what you learned in your karate days to what we do here at Chameleon. And it's sort of in our DNA, sort of a belief beneath the surface, I feel, in a number of different ways. But how did you get into karate, and when did you start? Because it's an interesting sport to get into in New Zealand, right?
Yeah, it's an odd one, because when I did karate, I didn't feel like I fit into that box of personality either, because I anime and gaming and whatnot. So I'd go, I was at a high performance sport internationally. I lived in Belgium for 2 years, competing around Europe, but I never really felt welcomed in that sort of cohort of personality either at the time. But I still really enjoyed parts of it. I really didn't enjoy some of it along the way as well, because it's so much high pressure. Usually from myself, to be honest. It wasn't external sources, but yeah, it's certainly a high pressure environment. I was expected to win a lot. The better I got.
Right.
So yeah, it's difficult, but yeah, I think some of the learnings I learned a lot of resilience from losses, in particular, wins as well. How to take a win and ground yourself pretty quickly. Not letting sort of like a big event create too much stress, if that makes sense, because we might have a world championships in France, and you'd find out about that years away, and it's hard as an individual athlete to not think about that and live a normal life. So
absolutely,
I learned how not to do in work, if that makes sense, and I didn't learn how to enjoy the sport as much as I probably should have. So
oh really? So
yeah.
was it a bit of a slog at times?
Yeah, and like I said, it wasn't due to external reasons, but no, it's just certainly one of those sports I didn't really enjoy. But I think because I was reasonably good at it, I put a lot of pressure on myself. And yeah, I kind of wish I'd had a few more grey hairs back then and learned how to deal with that stuff a bit better. But yeah, certainly in the work, I brought a lot of those learnings to my everyday, work life. And yeah, I've certainly enjoyed how to enjoy the small things a bit more now, which is pretty good, pretty handy when you're running a company, that's for sure.
Because how young were you when you started off in the karate world? Because you were and how old were you at Manchester when you won the gold?
Well, I just made the age limit. So I was living in Belgium when I was 17 years old. And I just turned 18 a week before the Commonwealth Games. So I was as youngest as you possibly could have been. So that put me right down the rankings, unfortunately. I had the world champion first round, which is tough work. But yeah, so I was pretty young.
And were you going, just a couple more questions on this, and then we can start talking some more learning design. But were you, I guess, coming from New Zealand, I can't imagine, even as good as you were, as you say, you would drop down the rankings. We're not known for our karate prowess, are we?
No, not on the world stage, that's for sure. I think like a lot of sports in New Zealand, we tend to punch above our weight. And Australia, and but no, I think it's the main reason why I wasn't known is because I'd never competed in the senior world stage. I was always competing in junior events leading up to that. So I won the junior world cup in Malaysia that year, and I think that might have put me on the radar a little bit, but I don't think that the bloke from England still knew who I was, and it's probably a good thing in the end. I thought I was going to get cleaned up, to be honest. But
in the final, in the gold medal
round, I was
right.
Myself to win it, that's for sure. So yeah.
So you weren't paying $1.20 at the TAB or anything like that.
I doubt it.
Gamble responsibly. And so right, so you get your gold medal, which, by the way, congratulations. I don't want to downplay that. But you return home to New Zealand. Did you keep fighting after that? And what was the transition into your career, I guess, in visual design? How did that sort of work out?
Yeah, so I had a couple of big injuries. I kept dislocating my shoulder. So I had two shoulder reconstructions, one after the other. I actually had one successful shoulder operation, and then I fell over when I got home. I was still on morphine. They sent me home pretty early, and I fell over and pulled all the out of my fresh shoulder reconstruction. So I had to go back under a shoulder reconstruction again. And I had what you call a Prime Minister's scholarship, so I could actually study, which was great because I was having a bit of a rest period from the sports, so I picked up design. I loved illustration. That was my kind of meditation for me, to be honest. I loved picking up the pen and drawing, and loved watercolor painting and stuff like that. So so I went to design school in Wellington. And yeah, that kind of started my career pathway at the time. I never really thought of turning it into a career, but I sort of I enjoyed the illustration side, but I also loved UI design. That was quite a new thing back then. So yeah, that sort of kick-started my studies and career, which is quite a neat way to
absolutely
a way to do that. That's for sure.
The nice little trapeze type strategy. So you're probably a bit young, Toddy, to make this Todd Hammington, this is your life episode. So we won't go full noise on every step in your career. The key one on I guess part of your career that I'm keen to talk about is that transition from Inspire Group to Chameleon, and the DNA that is ever present at Chameleon from everything we did at Inspire Group and everything you learned. So how did, without going really deep on the story, how did you sort of transition from Inspire Group into Chameleon, and what was that sort of pivotal moment in the birthing of the platform?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Inspire Group is a learning and design agency. They're based in New Zealand and Australia and Asia. And I actually started before that, to be honest, Reece. I started at a company called Collect Rewards, and it was a startup application company at the time. I just finished my studies, and they kind of brought me on as a designer.
Okay.
I was contracting to a company called Trade Me before that on their mobile website. But I came on board to Collect Rewards. They're now called Marcello, Marsello.
They've gone quite big, haven't they? Over in...
Yeah, so they're based in the States now.
Yep.
So I came on as their first sort of, I guess, product designer. I did all their branding, their UI design, their dashboard UI design. And this is quite early days, so, you know, we had to do a separate mobile UI design, so mobile.url, which is good fun. Matt's shaking his head.
Matt's having a laugh, yeah.
So yeah, that was those days, Matt, we kind of had to do a specific mobile UI layout, and then you had to do a desktop version in a completely separate environment. And that was the way it was coded too. So, but yeah, I kind of helped them get off the ground and got to the point where we built a really awesome brand. And yeah, it's really awesome learnings, to be honest, because I'd sort of minor employee shares in the company as well, so I felt like I had ownership.
Yeah,
it's a really awesome business model these days if people are looking for ESOP shares. And yeah, kind of got to the point where I was just moving shapes around. You know, we'd done the brand, we'd done all the creative. So I actually went out and contracted and kind of picked jobs that I really enjoyed doing, and Inspire Group were one of them. And I picked up as a contractor role just to take care of a bit of time while someone had their parental leave. So, but I really liked the idea of the problems that they were solving as a learning design agency. It was quite new to me, coming from more of, I guess, a sales and marketing product to these problems that Inspire Group was solving. I was quite excited by that.
And this is in Wellington, yeah?
In Wellington, yeah. So long story short, yeah, I kind of evolved my career there. They took me on full time as their design lead. Stu headhunted me and threw the bait out to come to Melbourne. Melbourne was going through a really cool transition period as well, where they were growing quite quickly and solving some really awesome problems with quite big Australian clients. So as the design lead, I was kind of right in the crux of problem solving too, which I really enjoyed. You know, where I was really intimate with the development team, but also really intimate with the learning designers. And we picked a model. We were talking about this the other day, Matt, where, you know, everybody came to the kickoff and were problem solving, not just the sales team or the learning designers. Is a really awesome kind of. I learned a few, you know, lessons and a few war stories out of that. You know, getting that process up and running as well. But being in the front, you know, trenches, dealing with these client problems certainly taught me a few things on how to become more efficient with design and development. That's for sure. And that kind of organically started, us creating a framework, which is now Chameleon. So.
And what was the specific moment? Like, was there a particular client you were trying to solve a problem with? Because I understand there was, you know, you and Danny at the time were essentially recreating the wheel every single time, right? And solving a lot of the problems and challenges that we hear about every day in the learning world that are still existing in a lot of ways.
It was a very bespoke approach to problem solving, both from ideation and development. But we certainly found that, you know, some of the development problems we're solving, we're pointlessly reinventing the wheel, if that makes sense. And I think the biggest client, I think from memory, there was Kmart, and they had distribution centers in the middle of nowhere that were getting really kind of close to dial-up speed internet connection issues.
We love you, NBN. We love you. Yeah.
This is a long time ago now, but you know, we had to really reduce the file size of those packages being sent down the pipe for them. So that's where we created our own bespoke framework. We didn't use any of the existing frameworks out there like Bootstrap or anything like that. We built our own existing one thanks to Danny at the time, and Sam's really evolved that, our tech lead. But we solved that big problem of making the actual content small enough for those users that where they're still getting a similar experience to someone with, slightly more lenient broadband speeds. So so that all started really was really creating an efficient file size, and that meant we could be more creative in other areas of that learning, which it meant we could build stuff faster, it could be delivered faster, and we could actually focus on areas where how do we improve the design and experience, how do we talk to the end users, and get a bit more time kind of, I guess, cultivating an experience that made the stakeholders feel really proud of what they were delivering, but also we could actually open up the channels to the learners. And it seems like such a foreign kind of concept, but we could actually talk to learners and get their feedback on how they felt afterwards, which is really cool.
Wicked. And so I guess fast forwarding and sort of looping back to some of your other experiences at Collect and Trade Me and even other contractor roles, I guess something we talk a lot about at Chameleon is trying to bring more of the web design world into the learning world. So trying to bring UX, UI, design principles into the world of learning, and we often feel that learning has been there's some great tools out there, of course, but there's it's sort of been held back in some instances. What do you think that the learning world can learn from, excuse the pun, from the world of web design?
That's a
big question.
I think I always have to kind of take a step back sometimes and realize that the technology in the learning atmosphere at the moment, it's a difficult place to operate in. There's completely different challenges that we have to tackle compared to someone like a Webflow or a Figma, where that's kind of just an open source design tool and they can just push stuff out and hope it works on the web, where I think there's certainly a few more moving parts in the learning world. And so part of me empathizes with that, and that's probably why sometimes it can go a bit stagnant, and some tools, to be honest, look backwards and try and solve problems that have already been solved. So why not just kind of emulate that and try and enhance it? On the other side of that, there's some amazing web tools out there that we could learn from. And there's also some no-code or low-code tools out there as well. So that are really pushing the boundaries on what the web can do. And there's certainly some of that kind of IQ that we could bring into our world and enhance it as well. So you've probably heard of the tool Figma. I think they really took a design application on the web and did things that felt like were a dark art to me. How they got a design tool working on a browser like they did was just really fascinating. But what that told me was the CEO there had a vision, and he stuck with it, and he worked with people that could make that vision happen. And they succeeded, and I think they just got bought out for it from Adobe. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I think what, long story short, is they created a tool that was just incredible for designers, for UI designers. So.
And so, what are some of those things we've introduced a little bit of that already into the tool, right? Like with the parallax scrolling, the different ways that we're encouraging learners to navigate through their courses. The traditional hit the old next button on the bottom right hand corner. We've started to apply some of that stuff already, haven't we?
Oh, look, we've barely scratched the surface, to be honest. I think I sort of look at our tool and go, oh, there's so much room for enhancement here. But I think what Figma did really well was they used the word collaboration and actually owned that word. And you look at their live canvas and how you can move things on a canvas together. You can even hit a microphone and talk to each other while you're in the, as opposed to sharing a screen in another app. that's some of the stuff we'd like to certainly bring into our tool as well moving forward, is really opening up the world of collaboration like they have. And I think in our world, it's just as important, if not more. So yeah, and yeah, I think what also Figma did was take some of those nuanced UI design features and put it on a website, and it works. It's crazy where you don't need that native application to do that anymore. So there's a lot of learnings from a company like Figma. When Figma's one of the many companies out there pushing the boundaries as well. There's a lot of no code, low code. There's a company like Webflow, for instance, who also brings some nice animation and some movement to what is usually quite a static experience, and pushing the web to do that hard work for them. So yeah, there's a lot of tools out there that's fantastic that we can certainly bring into our world, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I think that some of the DNA that Sam who many of you know, is bringing to the table as well, right, is around that sort of no code style of platform that is becoming increasingly appealing for so many different audiences. But we're obviously seeing it within the learning world as well, with many folks not necessarily having the development expertise of a of a Matt Bibby, and wanting to I guess open their skill set up as well, because we've had a number of discussions recently where learning design agencies are starting to change the way they're recruiting talent, which is a really interesting one for me. And they're starting to look at folks with more your background rather than a development background from a learning standpoint.
Yeah, I think there's certainly still a place for everyone across the design spectrum, and that's exciting. I think that deserves to be the case as well. I think the learning world tends to move and shift around a bit when it comes to hiring resources, whether they keep it internal or outsource, and that seems to fluctuate quite a lot as well. But yeah, I think where technology is taking us in general at the moment is, there's the idea of giving people a tool where it certainly shouldn't stand out as a tool. It should be a part of their workflow, and it allows them to create something they're proud of without need of as many resources that used to be required. When I was building the application for collect rewards, that the design process to getting from A to B was quite amazing. Talking, there's a lot of parts that we had to leverage off, and a lot of people and expertise to deliver a product that we weren't even proud of in the end. So where now you can fast track that process quite significantly with some of the tech out there. So
yeah, and we like question without notice, but put your Nostradamus hat on. Where do you think the learning world may be in a few years' time? I've asked you a big one.
The learning world.
Like I think something that I guess we're starting to see a lot more of is organizations starting to supplement the amazing skills of learning designers and developers, and starting to have more folks across the business starting to create content, which I think is exciting. I can see a few nods on the screen there. I think that's a big push at the moment. I guess I'm also interested to and excited to see where there's more content being created by the community as well, and being provided across multiple organizations at once, and starting to really lean on the experience and expertise of people across many different industries.
Well, I genuinely believe that there's been an awesome spotlight on how important learning can be for an organization when it comes to the really obvious things like retaining talent, which is obviously the Great Resignation's been about for some time now. And I think a lot of those companies that did have a mass exodus would have really looked in the mirror and gone, what could have we done better to retain some awesome talent? but yeah, I think obviously the community, the shape of a community moving forward, I'm hoping will be very different. I think at the moment communities are out there in the L&D space are there to help each other resolve problems rather than actually ideate and come up with future thinking ideas. And I really hope that's
I love that.
Awesome sort of momentum shift there in the L&D community. So and I think with those two things, it means there might be more funding and more of a proactive community. And when those two things combine, there's some awesome sort of innovative areas that can come out of that. So, but yeah, I think and obviously, the basics around the way technology's evolving and how COVID did expand the reach from some of these organizations' users. And I think in the L&D space it's quite exciting how they can cater for that now. It used to be a problem where now it's an opportunity. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you to touch on that point you made around Figma with collaboration as well. I think we're starting to see a lot more of that collaboration across cross-functional teams involving the learning team as well. So clearly they're being put in more of a valuable position as well from an organization standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak from experience with working at Inspire Group, but there's some really, really talented learning designers there. And we were really lucky we got to incubate our product in that environment because we were getting, at the time it was difficult because when you're bootstrapping a product, with no funding, it's hard to keep up with it and you feel like your nose is just above the water. But there's some extremely talented learning designers there coming up and solving some really big problems that mean a lot to organizations, so providing a tool that can actually help them voice their knowledge is pretty rewarding for us. And we're still perfect, that's for sure. We got a lot to improve, but yeah, we're kind of quite lucky on that aspect that we do get to work with some awesome learning designers and see the power of what they can bring to an organization. And that's just one of many, partners and agencies out there, obviously. So, but yeah, my personal exposure to what we got out of some of those learning designers is amazing.
Yeah. Right, I've taken up a good amount of your time, and I don't want to take up all of your time. But is there any questions anyone wants to fire through to Todd? Here we go. Oh, yep. Matt's just got a comment just regarding going back to your comment around the mobile specific style sheets.
Yeah, even the word style sheets, it brings back the memories, Matt.
Yeah.
I won't name the company I worked with, but I think they used to develop in a tool called Fireworks. I'm not sure if it brings back any memories, but yeah, interesting how far tech has come since then, that's for sure.
Come a long way in a short amount of time. I think, Frida, you've got a question, and it sounds like you want to just go off mute and ask the question without typing it, which is awesome. This is new for me.
Oh gosh, sorry. Was I not fully following protocol there?
No,
Sorry,
I love it. I love it.
Oh my gosh, trust me, don't invite me along anyway. I just wanted to ask, was it quite daunting for you to move from one field that you knew very well to a field that was quite new? I'm just wondering about the feeling, like in terms of that transition, and also for like people that went along with you on this journey, like possibly a partner or whatever the case might have been.
I think the passion around solving that problem outweighed the daunting aspect of it, if that makes sense, Freda. Like, I think, when you're passionately solving a problem that you feel like you're just scratching the surface of, that hunger and desire to get that done, and I sound like I'm preaching some philosophical stuff here, but it certainly outweighs the stress of it all. And I think luckily we were fortunate enough to work that business model in a way where that was being proven by some of the feedback we were getting through the tool. So I can understand how a lot of products don't make it past that phase, because it can get really difficult, because you're going to start with a really, minimal viable product that's not going to solve everyone's problems. But if your roadmap's right and you're solving, the highest of priority of those problems, I think, you can start to shape up a really good business and product. But yeah, I certainly every now and then I take a step back and get out of the weeds and go, yeah, it starts to get a bit daunting. You kind of, and at the same time, that because of, I guess, some of my career in sport in the background, I've dealt with that in a certain way that it doesn't keep me up at night anymore. I can sleep 5 to 6 hours if I'm lucky. But yeah, I think it's the passion and the desire to get it done is outweighed the daunting aspect of it. That's for sure. So far, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Frida. And Matt, you've got your arm up there.
Yeah, I didn't even realise we had a button that made our hands go up. So that's kind of cool, because it's much easier than typing. Firstly, really cool to hear a little bit more about you, Todd, and learn about your background and stuff like that. That's really incredible to be competing at that level with karate when you've literally just turned 18. And I loved how you mentioned none of those people knew who you were before you stepped into that ring, or whatever it's called in karate, but they certainly did by the time you left. The question that I had, is drawing still a form of meditation for you, or did using those skills professionally sort of change that?
100% is. My best form of meditation is I haven't quite conquered real meditation yet, unfortunately. I'd love to. But drawing's one thing. I have an iPad Pro. I do it daily, nightly. My mind off things, really. And it used to be audiobooks. I used to love audiobooks because I felt like I could sort of bring myself in and listen to things. But even then, it gives me the opportunity to start thinking about other stuff or problem solving work related issues again. Where drawing, you're 100% involved. And especially when I'm not a good drawer, I don't think.
I'll challenge that.
I'm kind of learning at the same time. So yeah, it's easily the best form for me to switch off and for instance, I'm not a good flyer on planes. I start thinking about the insane amount of engineering that goes into this sort of tin can full of rocket fuel while we're flying at how many thousands of kilometers an hour. But if I start drawing, it takes my mind off, all of those.
I actually saw someone saying yesterday that when they're trying to write something and they can't find the right words, if they grab a pen and paper and just start sketching something, even if it's completely unrelated to what they're trying to write, that's enough to sort of untangle their mind. Yeah.
Oh, totally. And I think I know in the development world it's called rubber duck syndrome or rubber duck philosophy, where you're not developing your coding, but you start talking about it and you start to unpack your problems by doing that. It's a similar sort of thing.
And it's the same way that we learn better by teaching other people the skills that we're learning. So the idea with the rubber duck is that it sits on your desk, and when you're trying to think through logic or explain how or figure out how something works, you can explain it to a rubber duck like you're teaching it to them. I don't have a rubber duck. But I do have this little turtle that is actually a pepper shaker from like my grandma's dinner table, and it just sits here and I talk to the turtle.
Perfect. Yeah, I know so many really talented developers that do that, Matt. Like it's the amount of references they use to that rubber duck is amazing. But you can take that anywhere, I think, with any art form. You'd start talking to a rubber duck, providing you're not worried about what people think about you in the office. But
it's when you're talking to the rubber duck more than other people, that's when it gets concerning, right?
It really depends who else is in the room. Sometimes the rubber ducky is the best choice.
Thanks, Matt. Alex, you've got your hand up, and wow, that background looks amazing there. Alex, where's that?
Yeah, kia ora team. That's from our office actually. It's out over Wellington Harbour. So I tend to get in somewhat early, and that's one of the perks of getting in slightly early is you get to see the sunrise. So yeah, Matt, I was going to say it's when the duck starts talking back that you're probably going to start worrying about it, to be honest. Just a quick question from me. You know, great to hear more about your background, Todd, and you know, loving our experience with Chameleon so far, and particularly the you know, the idea, not having a learning design background, the idea that taking that user-centric approach really resonates with us. And I think you know, too much of my past experience with learning design has been academic. One of the things that I've found is very intriguing about taking that sort of user experience approach is the potential to really ramp up the insight-driven experience that we're developing for people, learning experience. So curious to hear how you see, or whether you see a role for Chameleon and really you know, obtaining and harnessing some of those insights. I know the hosting aspect of the platform, there is some of that already regarding, you know, user ratings, etc. But you know, I mean, that's the way that web tools have been developed over the years, is how can we pull in more people and really enhance that experience. So yeah, I'm curious to hear from you.
Yeah, cool to hear your background, man. Yeah, I think we've tried to solve that problem in a way where it doesn't require the LMS, or it doesn't require our hosted platform, where it's in a way where you can open up a text field to your end users and deliver that content to somewhere that's safe and secure and obviously applicable for an enterprise. And we've actually cracked that code to a certain degree, but same thing as to how we've kind of built the tool to date, is it's very minimal at the moment. But yeah, we're looking to expand on that to the point where we could, you know, give our end users more of a voice easily without, you know, having to tie it into things like email or AWS servers sitting in the middle of nowhere. So I think, yeah, we've just cracked that code recently with that 5-star rating. So theoretically, you know, our users can retain or collect and retain that feedback without an LMS or a hosted platform, just by using our authoring tool. And we've built an application that sits by itself and collecting that data. And I think we're looking to really expand on that feature to quite some degree. We're not even going to be a Typeform or other tools out there that specialize in that field. But ideally, if we can have enough there to cater for what you're after, you know, that feels like we're certainly steering that feature in the right direction. Is that kind of what you're after, you know, in your perfect world?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're sort of a very insights-driven organization. I guess again, that's why something like Chameleon appeals. We want people to be drawn into the platform. It's a pull, not a push, right? And so how do we make that experience?
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it as well. Yeah.
So how do and I mean, the only way you're going to do that is through, you know, insights. Test something. Did it work? You know, did that interaction work, or that, you know, so getting that kind of level of insight, I think, would be
I get you. Yeah, no, I was sort of thinking of more qualitative feedback, sorry, mate. But yeah, the data, I guess that's the benefit of building a new generational web tool like Chameleon, is we're not hamstrung by old APIs. I won't say the dreaded words, but I'm sure you all know what we're talking about. But the data that we're pushing out is kind of what you'd expect from the web, and that data can actually drive some really good insights around, are people tripping up over certain areas, are they spending too much time you know, on this multi-choice, or you know, not enough time on areas you'd like to expose them. So regardless of what your thoughts are on it, ideally we can give you that data, and that's the exciting thing. The world we're playing in is we're pushing that data out the right direction at the moment. We can certainly collect that data and put it in a palatable place for you. It's certainly not perfect yet. We'd love to be doing more of that, but yeah, it's a big significant part of our roadmap, to be honest, that's for sure. We can provide the data that you'd kind of expect from most LMSs really easily. It's the stuff beyond that gets quite exciting for us. Yeah. Hopefully.
Thanks, Alex.
Question, man.
Yeah. And for those wondering, so Alex is at Tourism New Zealand doing some awesome work there and creating some really cool content as well. We've got a couple of minutes left. Are there any other questions that anyone wants to fire through to Todd? I don't know, any Cobra Kai questions or no? Todd, what are you going to say?
The host platform, Alex, which I think tourism is. I'm not too sure, but
yes,
hosted platform even makes that easier all over again. That's for sure. Yeah.
I think Alex, you're going to see some pretty cool stuff, and then not too distant future on the hosted platform that Todd's sort of talking about there, with some of those greater insights and more intricate pieces of data we'll be able to pull out of it, which is super cool. So I'm not going to ask you about Cobra Kai season 5, Todd. I know it's got nothing to do with actual karate, but any final questions before we tie this up? Thanks so much for the great questions as well. Toddy, I really want to thank you for your time. I know we're colleagues and we work together and stuff, but sometimes it's I know you're a humble guy and you don't like to talk about some of those achievements in your early days. So I appreciate you sharing that with the audience, and hopefully they picked up something they can take away on that front as well. So if there's no final questions, we might wrap it up there. And thank you so much for joining us. I've really enjoyed this one, and look forward to next week. Tom will be in touch with you shortly with a wrap up of today, and also who I'm speaking to next week. I won't drop any hints. I think I know who it is, and it's another great guest externally from Chameleon as well. So looking forward to that. Got any questions regarding the platform, anything we've talked about today, please shoot it through to myself or Todd, and have an awesome afternoon.
Thanks everybody.
Cool.
See you later.
Cheers, team.
Bye. Thanks, mate.